This meeting of the Starkville Board of Aldermen will now come to order. Please rise for the saying of the Pledge of Allegiance. Alderman Vaughn would like to open us in a word of prayer, which will be followed by a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our God, our Father, our Lord and our Savior Jesus Christ, by the will of the Holy Spirit. Again, here's a few of your servants, Father God, to come before you to handle the affairs of the city. We pray, Father God, in the name of Jesus, that you would take the reins of our mind, and Lord, that you would direct our hearts, that we make good, wise, and sound decisions. That every decision we make, Father God, will glorify you. And Father God, we pray for every citizen and every board in the mayor, Father God, that we will stand firm on the word of God, that we'll be concerned about all peoples of this city. And Father God, we just thank you so much for giving us a privilege. We give you all praise and glory. In Jesus' name we pray.
All right, you have before you a copy of the modified written agenda. Are there any proposed changes to the agenda as written? Alderman Vaughn.
Upon the H, personnel.
Item H1.
H1, move it to the consent.
Proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to place item 11H1, the authorization to promote Michael A. Reese to fill the vacant position of crew leader in the wastewater division of public services as presented to the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, that matter's been placed on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
Upon the K, sanitation, number 1.
Proposed revision from Alderman Vaughn is to place item 11K1, the authorization to advertise for bids for the purchase of garbage bags for the 2014 garbage bag distribution as presented on the consent agenda. Alderman Vaughn, is that your proposed revision?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, please note the change. Alderman Vaughn, do you have further proposed revision?
Yes, upon the executive section, economic development. A is already moved over to consent. And personnel, Mr. City Attorney on personnel, Mr. City Clerk, personnel, we have agreements been filed on this?
Not that's made it to my office, no, sir. It's one has been turned into the department, but it's not made it all the way through the process yet.
So let's move this from the agenda. Just hear it one time instead of hearing twice.
All right, and I would make the recommendation that the matter at least be heard in executive session, even though it's certainly likely the board may not take action tonight. We have a department head that needs some guidance on how to handle the matter going forward.
Okay, that'd be cool.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, I like to, we'll discuss that in closed session before we make that decision, go into executive session. So we'll take that up at length there. So Ms. Gander, make sure she's around at that time. One other thing, Mr. Mayor, under Roman number 10, board business number D, I think I've asked the clerk a few times, and just as recent as a few minutes ago, about the adoption of the Starkville School District tax levy at 62.96 mils for fiscal year 2013-2014, in accordance with the requirement Mississippi Code annotated 3757-1 and 213345. Clerk, I just asked you the same question publicly. Does this millage proposal represent any increase from the tax levy that the school district has for the last calendar year or fiscal year?
No change, Vice Mayor. It's the same.
So bottom line is they represent the same proposed tax levy.
That's correct.
Right. Well, if that is the case, then clerk, and based upon your representation, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move that item, Roman number 10D, to the consent agenda.
All right. Now you do have the superintendent that's here to make his annual presentation.
I understand.
I assume you'd still like that matter to be
I've
heard.
extended greetings to him. We're glad to have him, Mr. Mayor, but that's one less thing he has to deal with. Let's put it on the consent agenda unless there's an objection.
And I would say that would have my objection would be I would be recusing myself from that. So if it's put on the consent, I would have to recuse myself from the entire consent agenda.
Well, I hate to be that problematic, but Superintendent, it seemed like the support is here, but there's some technical issues with it. We'll just leave off the consent agenda. That's fine.
Alderman Perkins, do you have further proposed revisions?
That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Do we have any further proposed revisions? Alderman Maynard.
I would like to move that we take Roman numeral 8, the public hearing, and move it below item A in board business.
Proposed revision from Alderman Maynard is to reorder the agenda, placing item 8A as a new item B under board business. That would take item 8A and place it now as item 10B, and it would reorder the remaining items in Roman numeral 10 to accommodate the change. Alderman Maynard, is that your proposed revision?
It is.
Do I hear any objection? Any objection, any objection, any objection? Seeing none, please note the change. Alderman Maynard, do you have further proposed revisions?
I do not.
Any further proposed revisions from the members of the board? Do I hear any? Alderman Little.
Under 11, 3C,
Is that for consent?
yes.
Proposed revision from Alderman Little is to place item 11B3C, the authorization of obtaining 2 appraisals for the possible conveyance of 40.44 acres owned by the city west of the Highway 25 bypass and north of Highway 12, as presented on the consent agenda.
Mr.
And
Mayor,
the city attorney's got some comments that he would like to
I
make.
object to it.
All right, that matter will remain on the open agenda.
Mayor, while we're there, Mr.
Hold on, Alderman Little has the floor.
Okay.
Alderman Little, do you have further? Alderman Perkins?
Am I officially recognized?
You are.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Mr. City Attorney, when we get to that matter, there are 2 things I need you to specifically address. What's the governmental necessity and what's the rational basis? Be sure to address those 2 things when we get there.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Do we have any further proposed revisions? Any further proposed revisions to the agenda as written? Any further proposed revisions? All right, seeing none, a motion to approve the agenda as revised is in order.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to approve the agenda as revised. Alderman Vaughn, is that your motion? Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Vaughn, do you wish to speak on the merits? Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Motion clearly passes. You now have before you the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any objection to the approval of the consent agenda as revised? Any objection? Any objection? Any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda as revised has been approved. And you have no minutes before you tonight. That will take us to announcements and comments by the mayor and members of the board. I have one unscheduled comment tonight, and that is that the Mission Mississippi, a tour of the cross through the state of Mississippi. Mission Mississippi is an organization that is dedicated to racial reconciliation through the body of Christ throughout the state of Mississippi. They will be touring across all through this year in different communities in Mississippi, and they will make a stop this Saturday at noon at the Oktibbeha County Courthouse. I would invite everybody who feels so inclined to be there for the occasion. I would now like to introduce the newest members of the City of Starkville workforce. First, I would like to introduce our newest employee in the Sanitation and Environmental Services Department, Ms. Melinda Johnson. It is my pleasure to welcome Melinda Johnson as our new Secretary for Sanitation and Environmental Services. Melinda is originally from Starkville and is a graduate of Starkville High School. She earned her bachelor's degree in Office System Technology from Mississippi State University. Before joining the City of Starkville, Melinda was a substitute teacher for the Oktibbeha County School District, as well as the secretary bookkeeper for the West Lowndes Middle School. Melinda is married, and she and her husband, Clarence Allen, are the proud parents of 5 children: Shalisha Owens, Ariel Duck, Jamil Carter, J.P. Duck Jr., and Tashira Johnson. She and her family are members of Mount Pelier Missionary Baptist Church. Melinda keeps busy raising 2 granddaughters and is the PTA president at East Oktibbeha County Elementary School. But in her spare time, Melinda enjoys spending time with her family and traveling. Please join me in welcoming Melinda. I'd now like to welcome Lance Nichols as our newest firefighter. Now, Lance is originally from Houston, Mississippi, and is a graduate of Houston High School. Prior to joining the Starkville Fire Department, Lance was a service technician for Hometown Healthcare. Previously, he worked for Franklin Manufacturing and Linton Services as a volunteer firefighter in Houston. Lance is the son of Rico and Sheila Nichols, and is the sister of and has one sister, Laura Beth. He enjoys spending time with his Labrador, Brownie. Lance is a member of Pleasant Ridge Baptist Church. Please join me in welcoming Lance. And that concludes my announcements and comments this evening. Do we have any comments from the members of the board? Alderman Nguyen.
I would like to be recognized, Mr. Mayor. Tonight I have a letter that I will be reading. On Tuesday, August 20th, during our last board meeting, I, along with Alderman Little, Walker, and Maynard, supported the advertisement for the proposal of a tax levy of 2.78 mills for our city. While I'm comfortable with my decision for a tax increase based on the facts presented during the series of budget meetings, I'm not comfortable for an increase of 2.78 mills, which would create an increase from 20 mills to 22.78 mills. I am concerned about the financial hardship for many of our citizens. If implemented, a tax increase will provide funding for our many city's employees' pay raises, upgrades to infrastructure, training for our public officers and firemen, which creates retention for both the police and fire departments. It will allow our community to move forward and provide the services we need to stay competitive. As an alderman for our city, I am dismayed that without a choice or any other options, our city's taxpayers will pay for a municipal complex that was not supported on September 24, 2011. While I do not want to take ownership of an adverse decision that was made by several members of the last board relating to the creation of a municipal complex, I have no other option as an elected official serving in the capacity as an alderman for our city. I thanked Alderman Maynard, who is serving as our budget chairman. He has invested an inordinate amount of time on this 2014 budget. I expressed my concerns to Alderman Maynard, and he has, without hesitation, respected my concerns and request to review the budget. I'm delighted to take part in this review. In closing, I want to say thanks for your many emails, calls, and letters of support that I have received, not only from my ward, but other wards as well, regarding a possible tax increase. I yield before at this time, and thank you.
Are there any further board comments at this time? Alderman Little.
I also want to thank Alderman Maynard for his work on the budget. A lot of outside hours spent on the side, in addition to just the budget meetings we've had. He's to be commended for his efforts there. And I've also heard from citizens outside of my ward and inside of my ward over the last few weeks about this matter. And some favor and some are opposed to the millage increase that was proposed. That being said, no one likes to pay more taxes. However, we cannot continue basically living on cost of living increases as we've done for years. As we grow, we experience increased demand on our city services and infrastructure. Our operating expenses have also increased. Expenses such as fuel costs, asphalt costs, and equipment have all gone up over, among other things. A tax increase is not something that I desire, but I do believe that this board doesn't have an option. Departmental budgets have been somewhat flat over the past several years. There are salary inequities for city employees that need to be addressed. The city cannot continue to train firefighters and police officers only to lose them to neighboring cities or to the county for more money. These retention issues need to be addressed. We've been fortunate as a city to have been able to sustain city services primarily through sales tax increases over the years. However, these revenues have been committed to service the debt for our new municipal complex, with payments increasing to $538,000 for the life of the 20-year lease. There's no question that the city of Starkville is in need of a municipal complex. There's no doubt. However, the citizens were not given the opportunity to vote on the recent municipal complex or its funding mechanism. We don't know what the citizens would have chosen if a reasonable proposal would have been presented. We do know that it could have been cheaper. There's no question there. The reality at this point, the majority of the board believes that a millage increase is warranted. Spending down our surplus funds is not an option for responsible budgeting or long-term planning. In my opinion, we cannot service our debt with the municipal complex and sustain anticipated operating expenses without a millage increase. We have continued to review areas over the past couple of weeks in the budget that we think we can work to trim the budget down some and reduce the anticipated millage levy somewhat. I believe that we can do it for less than 2.78 mil requested previously. And department heads, This board is going to be challenging each of you over the next several months to be looking for better efficiencies within your departments. Just because we've done it in a particular way for several years now does not mean there's not a better, more efficient way to utilize technology and get the job done. And you need to be aggressively looking for ways to save money within your departments. Thank you.
Further comments from the members of the board? Alderman Vaughn.
I made a comment when we was looking for a raise for all the city workers. And one of my main comments was said, I said, you give them a raise, your insurance gonna go up. Up on the board, business E, consideration of approval employee medical plan renewal agreement effective October 1st, 2013. So what they raise going? The raise going right back into the medical plan. So what all we done, they still not gonna enjoy no raise and see about part of the raise, cause all of it going right back where I told you all it was gonna go.
Further comments by the members of the board? Do we have any further comments by the members of the board? Any further comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move to citizen comments. At this time, any citizen wishing to make comments may do so by coming forward, introducing yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good evening to the mayor and board. My name is Alvin Turner, Ward 7. The citizen, it's hard to be put behind the 8 ball, but citizen has some concerns. This is not Africa, and having animals that can kill us in the city of Starkville, that is very dangerous. Not being able to control these animals that need other places to live, we be more careful on what you let happen, what not happen. The people watching. The people also would like to know what did we do with the situation on 136 West Main, Carver Drive. We would like to know about bullying in school, and we also would like a copy, the NAC people like to copy of the standing ground law. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Do we have any further citizen comments?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Board. My name is Emil Lovely. I have some compliments for the city and the board. Along Louisville Street, you guys did a wonderful job. Landscaping's finished, streets widened, and I'm sure it was as I heard, it was at a cost of $1.5 million. But I have a concern also. I was born on Long Street. I lived there most of my life, and I returned, and I still have a residence there. When you cross West Main Street, approaching the historic district, Greensboro Street, there's considerable overgrowth there. The street narrows down. It is a hazard. It's a hazard to drivers, hazard to pedestrians. There is more pedestrian activity now than ever before. People are walking. As a matter of fact, yesterday morning I was on my way at 7 o'clock in the morning. There was a woman who was walking. As this thing is fresh in my mind that it's a hazard, I'm very cautious when I approach that intersection there. I happened to stop before she crossed a crosswalk. That needs to be addressed, and I expect and I hope that you will give us your support. Look at that and correct it as soon as you possibly can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lovely. Further citizen comments?
Mr. Levy, you're talking about where it turns into one-way, comes out right
That's
there
right.
next to
That's
Old
right.
Middle
That's right.
School?
That's right, yes.
Yes, sir.
Right there, Enoch Jones.
I certainly recommend that if you don't know what it's about, then drive out and see it.
Yes, sir.
You know, there's no toll over there. You don't charge it, go down that street. Go and take a look at it.
Mayor, Board, I'm Jennifer Prather, Special Events and Projects Coordinator for the partnership, and I just wanted to thank you, Board and Mayor, for considering our application for Pumpkin Palooza and for approving that. We're very excited. This event is in its 5th year, and we feel like it's a great event for Starkville, not only for quality of life for the residents, but as well as economic impact. For those of you who may not, be aware, it is on October 25th, 6 to 8, so we invite you all to come and enjoy it. We look forward to having you there, and again, thank you so much for the consideration of the application.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Prather. Further citizen comments? Have any further citizen comments? Any further citizen comments? Seeing none, we'll move to board business, and the first matter for your consideration under board business is the fiscal year 2014 tax millage and budget. Alderman Maynard?
Yes, sir, Mayor, thank you very much. As I think the Alderman from Ward 2 and Ward 3 mentioned earlier, we've certainly heard the citizen comments from the very outset of this process. And we have been diligently trying to find a way to meet our financial obligations now and to meet our financial obligations moving forward. Having had a couple of weeks to sit back and study the budget some more, I think we can reduce our millage request from 2.78 to 1.98 for this coming fiscal year. In order to do that, we are going to reduce some of the current budget items. Those are on the table in front of you here. Currently have a vacant CAO position that, while we will have to address at some point in the future, do not anticipate filling that position for at least the first quarter or the first half of this year. There we will capture some accrued salary that we can use to offset this year's millage increase. There is currently an assistant planner position and an inspector position in community development that are unfilled. We'll capture some additional revenue there. We've asked the police chief to delay hiring a position that he has vacant for 6 months in order to capture some additional revenue there. And the fourth proposal is to reduce the increase to Parks and Recreation's budget by $24,000 and offset that difference with an increase in the 2% draw that they receive by $24,000. So the net gain for Parks and Recreation will still be the same. They will still be receiving an additional $96,000 per year over and above what's budgeted this year. With those modifications, I would open the floor for discussion.
Further discussion? Alderman Wynn?
Again, thank you so much, Mr. Alderman Maynard, for listening at my concerns and going back in again, taking out some things in the budget that we do not need to bring this under the 2.78 that we had originally decided on. I was very concerned about that, as I said in my letter. I was concerned about the impact that it would create a financial hardship on many of our residents, and I just want to thank you for that.
Just taking some notes last night, and one was the It's actually on here, the police department, and we adjust, will this still have the realignment and of the chain of command and everything as far as the
Yes.
additional sergeant?
Right.
Okay. And then the second thing is 2 years ago, I believe we discussed the herbicide, we cut out about $7,500, does that sound right, Mayor? Has been included back in this year's budget?
It has been. It was out, it was actually, I believe that was the first budget of the previous term.
3 years.
When it was razor tight. That was the only year that the herbicide was out.
Okay.
Further discussion, the city attorney has just recommended that no formal motion be made on the modification until after the public hearing. So the way we would proceed is we'll finish any general discussion on this matter, we'll have the public hearing, and at that point in time, I would entertain a motion, should you wish to go forward with this modification. Alderman Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Chairman, let me ask you the first question. This discussion will negate any meeting for Friday, is that correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Chairman, I need you to be very specific on your explanation about this $24,000 for the parks. This is my first time seeing this. This was not in the packet, and that's one thing one reason why I frown on things given to me at the 12th hour. I'm just too busy to be handed things when I get here. But I need to make informed decisions. So there's been a prior vote of this board to give additional $96,000 a month for the operating expense for the parks, $8,000 a month, beginning the first day of October 2013. So now explain to me real clearly, because as to what you're proposing, so I'll be real clear, because I just heard you. I'll make sure I got a clear understanding. It's very important.
That's correct, yes, sir. 2% monies continue to increase, and the Parks and Recreation Department receives 40% of the 2% money collected that they can use toward new construction, acquiring new equipment, any park improvements, and maintenance. And the proposal is that because of this increase in money coming in, that their draw be increased an additional $24,000 per year that they can use to offset additional cost in those line items. They could then take money that's already budgeted from the general fund in those line items and shift that to gas and utilities where they need that additional revenue anyway. So they will still receive an additional $96,000 more in their budget in 2014 than they did in 2013.
So the board's prior motion will still be carried out. They'll still get the $96,000, $8,000 a month, again, October the 1st, and they'll get the 40% of the 2% money that's required by the state legislation. Now, so bottom line is that $24,000 shift, is that going to be coming? That's going to be reduced. They can reduce the general fund by that amount. Is that right?
Right. They would receive $72,000 increase in the general fund instead of $96,000 increase in the general fund.
So in other words, then the prior motion was for $96,000. So we got $72,000 from the general fund. Then the other $24,000 you tell me is coming out of the 2% monies.
Correct.
But theoretically, I mean, they're going to get that 2% money anyway. So are you telling us just because the 2% money is beyond its expectations, then they're going to have that much more money? Because bottom line, you reduce the general fund $24,000, and we're not giving them any more than the 40% because that's already authorized by state law.
That's correct.
So where is that 24 coming from? Because you reduced the general fund amount from 96 to 72, and they're already entitled to the 40% from the 2% money. So where are we getting another 24,000 from?
The additional $24,000 is coming from additional 2% monies that have been collected that they are entitled to. You are correct. It was the feeling of this board that for Parks and Recreation to continue to meet the needs of our citizens, they needed an additional $96,000 per year by reducing the amount out of the general fund by 24,000, it's not going to affect the overall cash flow that they're receiving, because they're still going to be receiving an additional 96,000 a year.
Okay, I just want to be clear on it. I'm not being redundant because it's my first time getting it. Let me ask one more question here. So the bottom line, you tell me they're still going to get $8,000 a month, effective October 1, and then they're going to get the 40% that they're entitled to. And I guess I'm just having a hard time following the math, because you told me the general fund is going to be reduced by 24,000, and then because already the 2% money is not going to change because that's state statute.
That is state statute.
So, are you saying they're going to get more money than 2% because of the more collected?
I'm saying is my recommendation that the general fund money be reduced by $24,000, because the total amount they are going to receive is going to meet their needs.
Mr. Mayor, we'll vote on this on the 17th, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Any further discussion prior to proceeding to the public hearing? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, I'll now open our public hearing on millage, on the millage levy. Now, this public hearing is on the advertised millage levy of 2.78 mils. Obviously, if you have followed the discussion, it appears likely that figure could be dropped to a figure of 1.98 mils. So I will certainly not call you out of order if even though this is technically a public hearing for 2.78 mils, if you wish to speak on either or both of those matters. But for clarification purposes, the public hearing that we are having tonight is on the noticed 2.78 mils. At this time, I will recognize anyone wishing to come forward and speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on the millage levy. Is there anyone now wishing to speak? If so, please come forward, introduce yourself, and you'll be recognized to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak?
I'll start. I appreciate that y'all have taken comments, have listened to them, have begun to make some adjustments. I think there's still some things you can do. I'd like first to talk a little bit about the municipal complex that I hear mentioned repeatedly. The increase in this year's budget, the fiscal year 14 budget related to the municipal complex is $25,000. We budgeted $345,000 last year. That number is increased to $370,000. It is not the source of your problems with this year's budget. Carl Smith did a good story today about the 2.78 tax levy, and he notes that the budget is increasing from $16.84 million in fiscal year 13 to $17.76 million in fiscal year 14. That's a $920,000 increase, almost $1 million. None of us, I think, in the city are opposed to the idea of some sort of tax increase. We know that tax millage is low, but simply raising taxes is not the solution to the problems that we have in the city. We need to be able to see where those dollars are going, what projects are going to be, what difference will we see in city government when you spend that extra $900,000? Where will that be evident to the citizens? Where's the return on our investment? And those are the things that concern us as taxpayers. I agree, our tax rates are low. They need to be higher, but there needs to be some benefit from them. Streets being resurfaced, drainage problems being addressed. There needs to be something visible that we can see. But at the end of the day, it feels very much as if y'all have made your minds up. You've backed off a little bit from your original position, but you've made your minds up to move forward with this tax increase. I would appreciate very much, as y'all move forward, if you would slow a bit slow a bit. You've got 4 years to do everything that you want to do. You don't have to do it all this year. And note that the municipal complex is not the problem with this year's budget. Again, you have a $25,000 increase related to the municipal complex. So the increases in the budgets are coming from other things. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Alderman Sistro. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Eileen Cartel, and even though I live in the county, I'm here representing my friends and family that live in the city. And I was one of the ones that spoke with Mrs. Wynn, and I want to thank her for listening to some of my comments as well as my concerns, because I am concerned about, an increase of 2.78, and I want to commend you, Scott, and you guys for looking at ways to decrease that. I wasn't going to say anything, but it's more of a statement, I suppose. It amazes me how someone can say what increase doesn't affect the budget. I think any increase affects the budget. I wasn't too much concerned about the increase. I was concerned by the fact that the city did not get an opportunity to look at this municipal complex that you guys went forward with. And numbers don't lie. Whether it's $1 increase or $2 increase, it's an increase. And I've asked this question before, and it may have been answered, and I'm sorry if I just didn't get a clear answer on it. And from what I understand is that's a done deal with the complex, so that's something that we have to live with. But I want to ask you all to please, going forward, to look at ways. We all want things. We want sidewalks, we want trash pickup, but these things cost. Just please consider getting these things for the citizen at little or no tax increase. And I want to thank Mr. Whittle as well as Mrs. Wynn to listening to my concerns, because that was one of them. It's not that we didn't want improvement. We just wanted a little or no cost. Not everyone makes the same amount of money. And we were going on and on and on about a $250,000 home as opposed to a $50,000 home. My father, $50,000 home, he loved it just like anyone else, $500,000 home. But he's on a fixed income. So I'm speaking on his behalf. Please, please consider everyone at all economic levels.
Thank you, Ms. Cartel.
Jim Gafford, Ward 5. Evening, Mayor. Like I say, evening to my Alderman Maynard. And I know you guys have been working really hard on this budget, but there's one thing there's many things really concern me. There's one thing in particular that concerns me, and I hear talk about the municipal complex and an increase of $25,000 over last year's budget. And yet, we also hear comments of departments are going to have to tighten their belts and look for ways to increase efficiencies, and you're going to be considering the job they do on a more rigorous basis. And yet, we've got a Parks Department who shows up and asks for almost $100,000 more per year that's made up of people that are not elected, that get to use our tax dollars and are doing a pretty terrible job. Where's the accountability? And if they're not elected, then the accountability falls on you guys. So you're accountable for things they do. And if you're going to agree to give them that money, then we need to be seeing more out of our Parks Department, because they get 2% money, but we're losing all kinds of money that should be coming because the Parks Department isn't attracting people to our city. So where's the accountability? But the accountability, or lack thereof, is starting to be a common theme with this board. And you've only been here for 2 months, so you really need to think about that.
Thank you, Mr. Gafford.
Thank you.
My name is Chris Taylor, and good afternoon, Henry Vaughn and my Alderman. My thing is, we keep talking about budget heads cut. Well, we got a couple of department heads that making at least less than $55,000 a year. So those two departments need to increase. Same thing Alderman Perkins said before. How can we raise someone coming in, advertise for a job coming in, that will come in making more than two department heads? So think about that. and no workers.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor.
Further public comments?
Good evening, board. Good evening to my alderman. I love you. That's my alderman right there. Trying to as you all know, I have been sick, so in case my 3 minutes go a little beyond, it's because of my voice accolading and going. I wasn't gonna say anything, but as I sit down, I came in today just to sit and observe. I would just like to say to each and every one of my aldermen, which you all are, and Park is the mayor, I would just like to say, we know if we're gonna have good streets, we're gonna have, communities, these pull downs where we wanna go into the community and do different things. Yeah, we knew that a tax increase would come along with some of this. But one thing about it, when we were sitting here talking about that department that we were gonna build, police department and how much it would cost, and this and that, we were still told that taxes would not be raised. We sit here, I talked, and I got to where I couldn't talk because they told me that I could not have anything else to say. But look where we at now today. The others that came up and spoke that was already elected, their time up now. We gotta do what's available for us to do. We got to be available to do. And like I said, thank you, Mr. Minor, for going through. And Scott, you have been on, come back again, once again, to the Starkville Park and Recreation. I don't know why everybody got to pick on Starkville Park and Recreation, but we're trying to do what we can do with the budget. We're not trying to take anything, because nothing goes in my pocket, nothing goes out of my pocket. But there's one thing about it, Starkville Park and Recreation has proved that it can do what it can do, and we just need a little bit more money. Lights are high, everybody's bill went up, so we're affected by it too. But I would just like to say, as you sit and make these decisions, thank you so much. But if we had not started the building, but it's here now, so we, in true reality, we're just here with it. Pray. That's all we can do right now. I'm gonna tell you, that's all we can do. But let's do what we can do. Quit blaming it on other people and go on and do what we got to do. And I thank you for my 1 minute that I had left, but I give it up now.
Thank you, Ms. Isaac. Further public comment?
In to the mayor and board, Alderman Vaughn.
Thank you.
I'm on fixed income. Every time they get mad in Washington, they want to put a stop on the government. That don't make people feel good. We are struggling just to survive. We know that we can't steal because we go to jail. But people not gonna go home. Let us realize the reality. And the reality is, we got to survive. Now, the guys in Jackson, they passed a open weapons law. The jury put a stop on it, but it didn't hold. So let us be careful. People don't know about where their tax go up, where their property go up, but they know that people in Jackson have years in this open weapons law.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Further public comment? Do we have any further public comments on the millage levy? Mr. Smith.
Emmett Smotherman, Ward 5. Just a few comments. I think as a public hearing that the citizens of the community deserve to know where the $900,000 is going to be spent. At least somebody ought to at least give the courtesy to the citizen a summary of where this money's going to be going. This is a public hearing. There should be more output from you to the citizens explaining some of this. Alderman Maynard mentioned there's a lot of one-time money this year that's coming due. Certainly, you can reduce your millage by doing some short-term financing, finance it over 4 years, reduce your millage to the minimum amount, pay for it over 4 years, and solve some problems here. If you're trying to pay all of it off this year, certainly the millage has got to go way up. So that ought to be looked at. But certainly the citizens ought to know where the $900,000 is going to be spent, and just put it out there for the community to see. And that's important. And these public hearings doesn't mean a whole bunch to the citizens. It needs to be more output from you all to the citizens, explaining in summary kind of what's going on, and don't be so secret about it. It could be some good advice can come back from some citizens that've been there before, and get us through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Further public comments? Do we have any further?
Marnita Henderson, Ward 1. And again, I speak for myself, but I'm speaking for other people who don't have an opportunity to come and speak, and that is elderly people. There are over 25% of the people who live in Starkville who are on fixed incomes that fall in an area that none of you even totally understand, and that is they make less than $1,000 a month. They are not eligible for Medicaid. They're not eligible for food stamps. They're not eligible for any assistance at this level. They are just above what they can get any assistance. Yes, their insurance goes up every year just like everybody else's insurance. So they cannot live on what keeps happening. So please consider, make your increase in your millage as low as you possibly can. A mill in Starkville represents more money than a mill in other cities, some of the other cities. You talk about we have a low millage rate. That's right, but we have a higher price for our mill. I've spoken with several counties, cities around us. They are all lower than we are. Okay, and so when you get their millage rate and their number of mills and multiply it out, we have as much coming in as they do. The next thing I want to talk about is your decrease in the Parks and Rec. Yes, you can take $24,000 away, and you can give them $24,000 from 2%, but that money cannot pay light bills. Light bills have been the things that have been taken. 2% money cannot be spent for maintenance. It cannot be spent for light bills. And I understand it's $24,000, but it's not $24,000 that they can use for the things that they need. And that's why they come up short, is because they are not getting the money from the area that they need. Yes, the 2% was passed so the parks would have it, that it was by law that they get 40% of it. But I don't care how much more you present above that, it's still not going to pay a single light bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Further public comment? Do we have any further public comment?
Hi, Chris Gottbrath, Ward 2. I also was planning on just listening, but I thought I'd say something. I think I'm actually going to echo your comment a minute ago, that it would be helpful for the Board of Aldermen to provide citizens some information about what the goals are for the tax increase. I mean, I certainly can understand the retention issues, and I wanted to keep the pay for city employees at a reasonable level. I think some explanation about, I've heard some numbers bandied about comparisons with other communities, but I think a little bit more explanation about that for people would be really helpful. I'd love to see the board connect the millage increase to some long-term initiatives. Are we raising the millage so that we can be more attractive to businesses outside of town and improve economic development in town? Are we increasing the millage in order to improve city services for people who live in town? Are we raising it for some other reason? I think that would be really interesting and very valuable information for citizens to really be able to gauge the value of millage increase. But I guess I'd also echo the concern that it does seem like providing more money to the parks for electric bills makes you scratch your head. Why is the electric bill such a particularly big issue? So that's a little puzzling from this side. Those are my comments. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Mr. Godbreath. Do we have any further public comments? Any further public comments? Any further public comments? Seeing none, that will conclude the public hearing on the millage levy, and we'll go back into discussion by the board. Alderman Maynard.
Thank you, Mayor. This time, I would like to recommend that the city clerk put together a budget.
Are you recommending or moving?
I guess I'm moving that he develop a budget at 1.98% millage, advertise that millage accordingly for a public hearing to be held on the 17th at the level of 1.98 mill increase. It would be 21.98 millage overall. To be advertised according to state statute.
All right, motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to direct the city clerk to develop a budget with a total millage levy of 21.98 mills and to advertise both the proposed levy and the budget summary in advance of the September 17, 2013 meeting of the Board of Aldermen in accordance with state law.
And let's cite the statute since we're naming a public hearing. And the specific statutory authority is 2739-203 parentheses 7.
So that motion would be the same as just stated, but instead of in accordance with state law, it would be in accordance with Mississippi Code annotated 2739.
2037.
2037. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Walker. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
I just want citizens to know that we have listened and we worked hard to put this budget together. And certainly the concerns of having a budget summary put out there online, having goals for the board of our budget and our millage increase have been heard as well to address those. That's all.
Further discussion.
I've got a couple questions. If I could just ask, I guess Alderman, a couple comments. There was heard some different numbers thrown around by previous aldermen, and I guess the numbers we've heard. So, what exactly is the financial strain this year? We heard a low number tonight, and I've heard in the 200s. I mean, what exactly we're talking about this coming year on the municipal complex? What kind of figures are you talking?
Budgeted.
I mean, I've heard, yeah, there are a couple
This
hundred
year's
thousand.
budget for the municipal complex is $340,000 in this year's budget.
370 this year, and that's up from 345 last year.
What now?
It's 370 this year, which is up from 345 last year.
Okay.
So there's a difference in 25,000.
So this year is 370. Okay. I guess just a couple of comments. First of all, I was going to thank Alderman Maynard for the audacity he has this committee as a whole. You know, it's probably the first time I've seen it that it's by far the most open and transparent way to do it. If anybody that knows, there've been lots of meetings. It's very hard as a committee as a whole, and I appreciate and applaud everybody at this table. And the many department heads have sat in a lot of late nights and a lot of hours. So I know it's hard to do that, but we wanted to do that this year, and that's been a good process. I know it's been a learning curve and a learning process for all of us, myself included. Some of the things I heard tonight, you know, so the municipal complex, we came up with a $370,000 figure.
I believe it is. I think we had to tail that back to 345.
$345,000 figure. That is a strain. That's a strain that the people didn't vote for, the people didn't want, and it is there. That's an honest fact. Some return on investment you'll see, I don't know that I totally support it, but the biggest return on investment I see in this budget is the Lynn Lane multi-use path. The two aldermen know, spending less than $200,000 for $1.5 million project is huge return on investment. So that needs to be duly noted that is, if you want to start talking about some things like that. Alderman Sistrunk and I had some conversations of what would be the perfect storm 2 years ago, and this was probably it. I remember we said that. Ladder truck through a major kink in the whole process, that some things that have happened that we cannot turn down. I think with the stimulus package of Fire Station 5, that we got to have it. If you want to see the bypass grow, you want to have the fire ratings maintained and increased, you got to have it. So that's a return on investment that at some point or another, I mean, you have to, we did the right decision, but now years later we're having to find the things we knew would happen as far as staffing it and manning it and the equipment purchases and things like that. So that's duly noted as a great return on investment. And the last thing I wanted to say was that we all know in here the rehires and the funding cycle and the Stennis Institute giving us some information that maybe we need to increase salaries. And if you don't, you lose employees to other departments. If you do, then we're in this predicament here. So it's between a rock and a hard place. What do you want to do? Do you want to pay your city employees more, or do you want to lose them and have the rehire costs and the retraining? So I mean, anybody knows if you're in a budget process, I know a lot of people in here are, and you're concerned citizens, that this is not the funnest part of being an elected official. And the last thing that we want to talk about, since this has been, I know just in the last couple of meetings, changed up in numbers, and especially tonight, will there be I'd like to look at it, will there be a finalized public viewing or something, or will it be publicized, the budget, where they can see between now and the 17th? What's the best way for the citizens to see that?
It will be on the website in its entirety, but it has to be noticed in the newspaper. The summary does as well.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mayor, can I speak to those notice issues? Yeah. I need to get this on the record. If the board chooses to go ahead and vote for this public hearing on September the 17th, the same notice requirements are required in this case, in that it has to run once a week in the 2 weeks prior to the meeting. So the city's on a short time frame. And the first notice has to go out at least 7 days prior to the public hearing. And so my recommendation to the city clerk is get that notice in like Thursday of this week.
It's already booked.
Okay, for this Thursday? Good, okay. And then running again when next week?
Probably on Tuesday.
Okay, that would work.
Further discussion. Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, first of all, let me say, please ensure that you get to us well in advance of the 17th, a very detailed, meticulous, and a comprehensive summary, so that we can see all of the components of this budget for the FY 2014. And the motion that you made to the city clerk, and of course I have great respect for him, but it's very broad authority you gave him to prepare a budget in accordance with 1.98 mils increase. But at the same time, are you asking him to incorporate all the changes that was handed to me? I got about 5:30, but you asked him to incorporate all those changes here that was at the table tonight?
That is correct.
And one last thing I want to say, that I'm still not comfortable that the change that the budget chair is proposing comports with the intent of the board when it passed the motion for the $96,000 for the additional funds for the operational expense for the parks and recreation. And let me just say one thing real clear. The budget chair has proposed that dollar amount be reduced by $24,000, but yet he's telling me, and us rather, that the difference will be made by an increase in the 2% monies. The only way an increase percentage-wise can be made in the 2% money has to be approved by the legislature. That formula is already devised. 40% goes to the parks, 20% goes to Mississippi State, 10% goes to the city of Stark, 15% go VCC, and 15% go to OCEDA. So, I think what this motion does, unless I just see some hard figures between 9 and 17, but it seems like it reduces that, and hopefully I want to respectfully request my colleagues to ensure that the intent of this overwhelming motion. The motion may have passed 5-2, or maybe been unanimous. I don't remember, Mr. Clerk, but that was a strong motion. But hopefully my colleagues will impress to ensure that that money is there when we get ready to adopt this budget. And the final thing I want to say is, and I hate to bring this up, but this has been spoken to tonight. Yes, this municipal complex has really, in my opinion, has had and does have a great impact on this budget. The interest payment for this coming fiscal year is $240,000, and so basically you got an extra $105,000 in the budget to help deal with some low figures for the next fiscal year, because the next fiscal year, beyond fiscal year 2014, your payment's going to run you about $545,000 a year roughly until through year 20. So, you know, and we need a complex, but in closing here, as I have repeatedly said, that the best way to have done this was to submit this to the people. So you let the voice of the people be heard if you do that. And if the people had approved that by the required vote, then that will have been a mandate from the people, and then therefore that would have been taken care of, because the certificates of participations were issued as a method of financing to get around the vote by the people. So now we're having to deal with that. The city attorney made it clear at a prior meeting that this is something that we are stuck with. So the bottom line is we're in a tough situation. I think we could find ways to balance this budget without any millage increase. It's just a matter of what you want to do. Look at the in-fund balance. There's just some philosophical differences, but I think it can be balanced. But it depends who you ask that question to. So I'm against any millage increase. So with that being said, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to yield the floor.
Further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, at this time, all those in favor of Alderman Maynard's motion, please signify by raising
Mayor,
your hand.
I'm gonna stop you first of all. I guess I'm gonna have to probably follow protocol. If this has a pecuniary benefit to my family members, a city employee, I'm probably gonna have to recuse myself just like I do at each and every meeting. So I guess the question again is, does this have a pay raise for the fire department?
This particular motion does not directly have one, but it is creating a budgetary product that would have a pay increase for firefighters.
City Attorney, do you think I need to recuse myself from this?
The cleanest thing would be to go ahead and recuse at the first instance of getting the ball rolling on that raise, which would be this vote.
All right, Mayor, I'll recuse myself from this vote.
We'll give Alderman Carver a moment to exit the room. All those in favor of Alderman Maynard's motion, please signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. By a vote of 4 in favor with 2 against, the motion passes. Could somebody...
Mr. Mayor, may I have a question to the city attorney before the gentleman come back in? Mr. Attorney, we may need to check into the legality of those other motions that the gentleman from one has voted upon during the budget cycle that may have had some effect upon that. And no disrespect, just want to make sure we're legally clean on it.
No, I understand that, and as you know, ethics issues are personal to the alderman and not as to the entity.
I understand.
And so I have to take those issues as they're raised.
Gotcha.
Yes,
Very
sir.
well, thank you.
Could somebody notify Alderman Carver to come back in the room? The next matter that you have before you is the proposed budget from the school district and the millage levy. At this time, Dr. Holloway, who I see much of the school board here as well, is going to make his annual presentation to the Board of Aldermen.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recused?
Yeah. And we'll give Alderman Walker a moment to exit the room.
Mr. Mayor, I gotta be recused too. I forgot.
We'll give Alderman Vaughn a moment to exit the room. Dr. Holloway, it's not that they don't like you. The Ethics Commission is particularly strict on conflicts of interest with relatives that work for the school district. So,
We've had some experience with that ourselves. So. I just thank you for this opportunity to meet with you tonight. We have our board president, Eddie Miles, here, past president Keith Coble here, and Jenny Turner is here. And I'm glad to report, except for Keith, 2 of those are your recommendations to the school board, and we appreciate that. We also appreciate the time that you've spent. It's pretty obvious that these are very difficult issues. My wife took our dog to the vet, and the vet found out I was superintendent of schools and said, I wouldn't have your job because I know how mad people get about their pets. I can't imagine how mad they get about their children. So, but anyhow, I appreciate the tax dollars in the statement. We want to have a strong voice to say that we support the city government. Last year, there was a conflict between the 2 meetings, and you could not move your meeting, but we had legal authority to move ours, and so we've separated that, so there's not any conflict there. We've had a great start of the school year. We did change our busing and separate our K-5 students out from our 612. It was a rough start in the first few days of school, but we've got that worked out, and I think the transportation is going to continue to work a lot better. We understand that we have an impact on the city. When school begins, there's not a lot we can do about 1,200 parents who want to walk their child to Sutton Elementary School, and so that's a big traffic problem. But we're doing all we can to make those easier and set up processes so that that happens easily. Moving into the budget and how it's changing, the first thing is our budget relates to the number of students. In the past, we've had an increase of about 2% a year. That's over the last 10 years. But you'll notice in 2015, our enrollment will go from 4,422 to 5,322. And that is the consolidation of the Ocklawaha County School District coming into our school district. We're working hard on that. We've had several meetings, but I think the real work is just starting to be done about what this means and how it will actually take effect and be a good thing for our students as well as their students. The next page is our budget, and you have the 2014 budget, the fiscal year 2013 year budget, which was our past year, and then our 2013 actual budget. Last year, we finished revenue over expenses, which is something we always want to see, of $275,000. Our current fund balance is $2.3 million. The 2.3 is really a little low for school districts. We need to be between 8 and 10% to be able to not have to do a tax anticipation loan of us borrowing money to pay our teachers until the tax money comes in. And so that would, if we can get in that financial condition, that would save us money on paying interest. The next page, and going back to Mr. Perkins' question, our tax rate for this school year is the same, 62.96. However, we did have passed a 3 mil tax increase levy for 10 years. That won't begin being collected until 2014. But the next year, we have a 4 mil reduction. So the net increase over the 3 years is going to be less taxes for the taxpayers. Now, the reason for those items or why we need this money, that 3 mil over 10 years will generate some $10 million. We've already been approved from the State Department to receive a Q note, which is a $2 million 0% note that has to be collected through a 3 mil levy by law for that to be legal. But you see a list of projects that we've done, and we've got these together at the beginning of the year last year. We've costed them out. Last year, we also had strategic planning meetings all year, which several people in this room participated in. And that's how our constituents voted to spend these monies, items at the top, of course, being the big ticket items, primarily roofs for AMS, Overstreet, and Millsaps. I would like to say one thing about Overstreet. It's a possibility in this consolidation that we may need to make that school a real school again rather than an alternative school. It's just size and space. We have
no room to grow at Sutter. We have no grounds to build. We have no area to put trailers. And that's also true at Henderson Ward Stewart. That's also true at AMS. Now, the high school is a separate entity, and we do have a pretty good volume that we could take maybe the entire 300 students that the county has into the high school. And we're running through the scenarios to see if that would happen. But there are vast differences in our programs and their programs and our athletics and their athletics. And for every child to have the equal opportunity, we need to think about consolidating them into the high school itself. But it presents problems because right now we have 4 periods of lunch. We can only seat 200 students in the cafeteria. We have to add another lunch period, and that just messes up the schedule for the entire day. But there may be some creative solutions we hope to as we work through these issues. The next page shows we just picked out some items where we had saved money this past year. That totals $311,000. And we continue, we understand we need to be good stewards of the public's money, and we will continue to find ways to be more effective and serve children better. The next page is where we added some items, and I'd just like to point out that what we added primarily was 7 more teachers. And that's what we think education is about, is getting teachers in front of children and serving those children. The next portion of this, I don't know, Mr. Mayor, if I want to go through all of it, but it's what came out of our strategic planning. But one of the things that came out of the meeting was the intensity of our patrons, of our parents, toward the programs that we have in the Starkville School District. The music, the drama, the art, the athletics, the robotics program, the ROTC, that's what makes us different than other schools that are out there. I think the other thing that's really important I'd like to talk about is that they wanted increased collaboration with Mississippi State University, with EMCC, with industry, and the faith-based community, that with those partners and with you as a partner, we can certainly do a lot more for our students. And the last thing probably took up an entire meeting, was about communicating proactively and transparently to the public about who we are at Starkville School District. And I just think that that's really important. I think that you're going to be seeing a lot more of our initiatives to inform the public, but the primary, put that message face to face to let people know who we are and what the Starkville School District means to kids. So unless I can answer some questions, we continue to spend a lot of time on consolidation, and that's vitally important. There's still some legal issues out that have to be worked out before we move forward. The 2 elementary schools are pretty much standalone, have good rankings, have good test scores. And speaking of test scores, we do anticipate improvements in our test scores, and I'd love to tell you what that is, but those test scores are embargoed for about another 2 weeks. So, Mr. Mayor, what questions could I answer?
Are there any questions or comments? Alderman Perkins.
Mr. Mayor, just want to say brief, Mr. Superintendent, want to thank you and the school board for everything that y'all doing for the children, the school district, and the community. And in light of that, may I make a motion, please, sir?
You may.
Mr. Mayor, I move the adoption of the Starkville School District tax levy at 62.96 mils for fiscal year 2013-2014 in accordance with the requirements of Mississippi Code annotated sections 3757.1 and 2133-45.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion to adopt the Starkville School District tax levy at 62.96 mils for fiscal year 2013-2014 in accordance with the requirements of Mississippi Code annotated section 37-57-1 and section 21-33-45. Alderman Perkins, is that your motion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear a second?
A second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Perkins, do you wish to speak on the merit?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes. Thank you, Dr. Holloway, and thank you to our members of the school board. Let me just briefly recognize you. I see we have Ms. Turner, and I see Mr. Miles there in the back, and Mr. Copel. thank you all for being here tonight.
Yes, Rob Logan, our.
Oh, yeah. And we have Mr. Adams' counterpart from the school district, the guy that controls the purse. All right, the next matter before you is consideration and approval of the employee medical plan. And Mr. Cox?
They're coming back in.
Okay. We'll give Alderman Vaughn and Alderman Walker a moment to re-enter the room. Mr. Cox is here to make his presentation on the medical plan for 2014. Mr. Cox?
Mayor, council, thank you, opportunity to be here tonight. We continue to monitor your insurance plan, providing reports monthly to Mr. Adams. As most of the board probably knows, the plan is a self-funded medical plan through Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. So cost of insurance is basically net cost of claims to the city. Claims are being paid by the city up to $125,000 per individual. And then we have an aggregating pool of claims through a premium reduction agreement we have with the reinsurance carrier to create what we call an aggregating specific pool where we pay claims on any individuals that go over that $125,000 threshold. Net result this year is basically cost has been flat with what was expected for the plan year. We will be facing basically medical trend costs as we don't expect some of the large individual claimants' circumstances to change this coming year. And so we have to budget for those expected costs again for this coming year. So net result on the medical plan is a 7% increase to absorb basically increase in medical inflation costs for the coming year. Had a slight proposal for rate increase on the dental and vision plan, but we were able to negotiate a rate hold on those for an additional year. I'll be glad to answer any questions that I can publicly on the medical plan.
And I'm not sure if this question is best posed to you or the city clerk, perhaps the city clerk. But this insurance package will not increase the contribution required for any employee for individual coverage, correct?
That's correct. And well, assuming it's the will of the board through the budget that you all approve, our plan is to propose that the cities continue to pay 100% of the employee costs. However, there will be an increase in, we are proposing an increase in family coverage. Of course, that's also at the, when the time comes, we'll seek guidance from the board on that. But as a document that we're planning to propose, it would be that the city would continue to fund the employee coverage, and that we would be passing increases through on family coverage.
Alderman Perkins.
Very briefly, Mr. Clerk, just tell the board so we have the employees will know what dollar amount will the family coverage increase from, and what amount will it go to, and same with the dental. Can you tell us what dollar amount it will go from and to?
I can. Tim, tell me if I'm wrong. It's about $90 pre-tax, which should have roughly a $65 to $70 effect on the employee. Is that correct?
That would be, yeah.
That's for medical. What about dental?
No change there.
No change on dental and vision.
And that will go into effect October 1, 2013?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Maynard.
Mr. Clerk, how many employees do we have on the family plan?
Very few, relatively. It's less than 20, isn't it, Tim?
It is. We have 28.
28.
As of July.
There's 28 employees that participate in the family plan.
Correct.
So 28 employees will be affected by that increase. Do we know what the increase on the individual roughly is?
It was 7% on 380. It's 393.
Increased to 393. And this,
2660.
as a point of reference, the the board, the prior 2 years have absorbed that cost increase that would have passed on to the dependents in the plan. So we're looking at a claim factor on the self-funded of being 370, but the city had absorbed that extra dependent cost in those prior years, so you had a net cost of about 380 to the city.
So that's roughly $26.60 per employee per month increase.
That's correct. And Alderman, there was a concern that if we had absorbed that family coverage for a third year, that we're starting to talk impermissible benefits for those 28, so.
So just for everybody in the audience, that's another increase in our budget this year of $89,376 roughly. If my math is correct. It's an additional item expense that we're absorbing this year. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Further discussion. We need a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Little to approve of the employee medical plan renewal agreement effective October 1st, 2013 as presented. Alderman Little, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do we hear a second? Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Little, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Measured by a vote of 6 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. Thank you, Mr. Cowell.
Thank you.
The next matter on the agenda is a request to authorize 2 appraisals for the possible conveyance of .44 acres. Is the attorney for Mr. Rogers here this evening? I'm going to let you take the lead on this matter. It turns out the city rather fortuitously owns a piece of property that has a development prospect, and Mr. Rogers' attorney has come tonight to tell us about that prospect.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is James Peden. I'm an attorney with the small firm of Stennett, Wilkinson, and Peden in Ridgeland. I just got here from Jackson a few minutes ago. I've been discussing this matter with your distinguished city attorney, Chris Latimer, for, I guess, 2 or 3 weeks now. I should also point out that I have here with me our engineer, Mike Brent from Starkville, whom I'm sure you all know. The piece of property that we're talking about here is 44 1/100ths of an acre, which I, for lack of a better name, have called the leftover parcel. And everybody has just become aware that this leftover parcel is indeed left over. As I understand the situation, Mr. Brink can probably speak better to it than I can. This 44 1/100ths of an acre tract was once a part of the right-of-way of the original county road known as New Light Road. Several years ago, when the bypass was built, a new interchange was built where the bypass crosses Highway 12. As a part of that, New Light Road was relocated. So, but this old 44 1/100ths of an acre was no longer needed, and apparently it was just forgotten about. The county had no need for it. When we became aware of the situation, and our client, Robert M. Rogers, who many of you probably know, who's invested heavily in Starkville, he is proposing to develop this area on the west side of the bypass. Well, he would like to acquire this 44 1/100ths of an acre to add to his land. It will assist him in developing a hotel and possibly a restaurant in this area. So when Mr. Brent advised us of the situation, we contacted the Oktibbeha County authorities. Don Posey, the county administrator, checked with the attorney for the Oktibbeha County Board of Supervisors, and they concluded that when this area was annexed many years ago, the city of Starkville, as a matter of law, by annexation, succeeded to the ownership of the old public right-of-way of the original New Light Road. And so my client, Mr. Rogers, through his company, Starkville Investment Company, LLC would like to acquire that. As I say, I've been discussing this matter with Mr. Latimer, and we concluded that the best way to proceed was under the statutory authority set forth in Section 21712B of the Mississippi Code of 1972. That effectively allows the city to sell land that it does not need based on the fair market value as determined by the average fair market value set forth by two appraisers who make an appraisal. Mr. Latimer and I have talked about two appraisers whom I think are acceptable to both sides. The statute says that in this circumstance, the purchaser pays half the price and the city pays half the price. Mr. Latimer advised me that based upon precedent, the Board of Aldermen prefers that the purchaser pay both appraisal fees, and Mr. Rogers is willing to do that. So I want to thank the city clerk's office for putting this matter on the agenda tonight, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, and I'm sure Mr. Brent would be happy to answer anything that he might know about.
And to clarify, Mr. Peden, the action that you are asking for tonight is for the city to order two appraisals on the property that Mr. Rogers has agreed to pay for.
Right. And hopefully we'll get a fair market value that'll be acceptable to everybody, and then I think there would be a later order, Mr. Latimer, to authorize the conveyance of the property based upon the fair market value, the average of those two appraisals.
Right, and that would have to be done by resolution.
Discussion.
Mr. Mayor, may I be recognized?
You may.
Mr. Attorney, you want to answer those questions that I posed to you earlier?
Sure. The test that Alderman Perkins was referring to is the rational basis test, and it's a test that applies to any governmental measure if it gets challenged for its appropriateness. And what the test says is that an action by a governmental entity is presumptively valid if it's rationally based on a legitimate governmental objective. And what Alderman Perkins asked me to opine about is the legitimate governmental objective. And Alderman, before I make that opinion, I do want to state that I do think that's a fact-finding mission by the board that's within the board's sole province. And I'm happy to propose a fact for the board to give whatever weight it might. At the same time, I wanted to issue that disclaimer that I think that's solely within the board's province. Let me say one other thing that's germane to your question. In addition to that test, I think we're traveling under an even more specific test that is outlined in the statute that's listed. And that test is that if the board gets the appraisal back and decides to sell the property this way, the board has to make a finding of fact that, number one, the property is no longer needed for municipal purposes. Number two, that the sale of the property by competitive bidding is not necessary, and that the board's comfortable with this appraisal process. And three, that the process, the sale, will foster civic, social, educational, cultural, moral, economic, or industrial welfare of the city. And so ultimately, if the board likes the appraisals, a resolution will make those factual findings for the board to vote on.
Mr. Attorney, do we know before we, I'm just asking you just so we'll be well informed, I'm not speaking against this, Mr. Attorney, but do we know at this time, so the board can arrive at a fact finding, is there any governmental use for our city for this property? Is this something that we don't need and we need to just go ahead and proceed with from your talk with the staff? And
I noticed in reading the packet materials that our Community Development Director, Mr. Snowden, has recommended that this area is no longer needed for development in the city of Starkville. Is that true?
That's correct.
So at least a city staff person has made that factual finding or recommended it.
And from what I heard, that the attorney and his client are willing to pay for the appraisal and any other expenses, including the preparation. I think they need to pay for the appraisal costs, any other costs, the preparation of the deeds. So we don't be out any expenses, and we just clear, the entire sale proceeds.
I suspect that would be agreeable, Mr. Peden.
I think it would be, yes.
Right, and I like to see that put in. Do you have any proposed findings for us, with all that being said, Mr. Attorney? You give us the recommended language so we can have all that together, so they can pay for the appraisal, so they can bear all the costs.
One thing I did tonight, if the board wants to handle this from a one-stop shopping standpoint, is Mr. Peden's right, that the motion before the floor tonight is a very narrow motion just to hire appraisers to appraise the property. If the board wanted to go ahead and enter into a resolution tonight to sell the property based on that appraised value, I do have a resolution drafted to that effect that makes the factual findings and it specifies that the appraisal costs will be paid by the applicant, and we can just tag on to that any and all other expenses will also be paid by the applicant. So I think the board has discretion to just do the appraisal issue tonight or to go ahead and pass the resolution if it's the board's pleasure.
Mr. Mayor, you've been closer to this than I have, so what do you recommend? You want to go ahead and get through the whole thing and do the appraisal?
Yeah, I'd rather work through the whole thing to the extent that the board's comfortable with it.
Okay, all right.
Let me add that language to the resolution, and I will pass that to whoever wants to do that.
You know, I'll just point that out, so whatever the board wanted to do, and I was trying to get your recommendation, Mr. Mayor. but
I
have a
would
problem.
recommend that we work through the whole thing.
Okay, well, Mr. Latimer, if you want to draft a motion, and we'll see what the board does with it, that, about pay all the costs and including preparation of the warranty deed, pay for the appraisal, and, put all that language in there so we can just get through with it and everything that we need to be legally covered on that. And if the board wants to do it that way, then we'll approve. If not, then we'll go back to the appraisal. Whatever the board wants to do.
So what this is a resolution that makes all the factual findings and it spells out that the appraisal fees will be covered by the applicant along with any and all other charges and fees related to the conveyance. And so the motion would be very simple to adopt the resolution as reduced to writing by the city attorney on this particular issue.
Alderman Perkins, do you have a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I offer the motion that's just been prepared by the city attorney.
Alderman Perkins has made a motion to adopt a resolution to authorize sale of .44 acre leftover parcel of land on the west side of Highway 25 bypass to Starkville Investment Company LLC pursuant to Section 21-17-1, subsection 2B of the Mississippi Code of 1972, as reduced writing by the city attorney.
Yes,
Alderman
sir.
Perkins, that's your motion?
Yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Carver. Alderman Perkins, you wish to speak on the marriage?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. Measure clearly passes.
Just add that language in paragraph 5 about any and all costs. Okay.
Discussion. Fire Department claims docket. Motion has been made by Alderman Little to approve of the claims docket for the Starkville Fire Department as of August 30th, 2013. Alderman Little, is that your motion?
It is.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Little, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 By a vote of 4 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. Could somebody notify Alderman Carver that he may now come back into the room? The next matter you have before you is the request for approval of the claims docket for everything except the fire department.
So moved.
Motion has been made by Alderman Walker to approve of the City of Starkville claims docket for all departments except for the fire department as of August 30th, 2013, as presented. Alderman Walker, is that your motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. Alderman Walker, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No.
Any discussion? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
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 By a vote of 5 in favor with 2 against, this measure passes. The next matter on the agenda is a request for authorization to hire Hunter J. Brown, G. Patrick George, Christopher L. Jackson, William A. Jones to fill vacant police officer positions.
Mayor, I make a motion. Approve that request.
Motion has been made by Alderman Maynard to approve the request for authorization to hire Hunter J. Brown, G. Patrick George, Christopher L. Jackson, and William A. Jones Jr. to fill vacant positions of police officer in the police department as presented. Alderman Maynard, is that your motion?
It is, yes, sir.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion's been seconded by Alderman Little. Alderman Maynard, do you wish to speak on the merits?
No, sir.
Any discussion, any discussion, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
By a vote of 6 in favor with 1 against, this measure passes. And that will conclude the open session portion of the agenda. We have one matter for potential discussion in executive session. A motion to go into closed session to determine whether, motion has been made by Alderman Vaughn to go into closed session to determine whether there is a need for an executive session. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Motion has been seconded by Alderman Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please signify by saying nay. The board will now move into closed session. I would ask that everybody clear the room so the board can begin deliberation.
Lisa.